The world is crying out for an experimental Tajtan ship, but it wasn't the only machine taking lives down there. In this video we show several submarine accidents where their crew was mercilessly executed. Being in a submarine in the depths of the ocean is about the same as being in space or in the sky. Only the machine protects you from the unforgiving environment outside. A submarine accident is always serious, and we should not forget this industry in the context of disasters. The U.S. Strasser submarine claimed the most casualties, namely 129 men. It was a U.S. Navy nuclear-powered military submarine. Originally designed to detect and destroy Soviet submarines, the submarine entered service in 1916. It was then the pride of the U.S. military, because she could go deeper than her predecessor. The submarine was equipped with new technology such as a 3D low-frequency radar and a trigger battle control system, but was very unlucky, having other problems prior to this fatal accident. First he had problems with the propulsion, and then after a collision with the recorder he had to undergo a major overhaul of the hull. 09-04-19-163 The vault under the command of Lieutenant John Wesley Harvey left the Guitar in the state of Maine in the morning. After a series of repairs, the submarine was scheduled to undergo several tests, including a dive to a maximum depth of 400 meters. It was the Skylark that tended to her on the surface. The sub should descend slowly, stopping every 30 meters to check all systems. As the trash can neared its maximum depth, Skylar received a seemingly incomprehensible message from the trail. It happened through acoustic communication underwater. The report spoke of problems and a poor perspective. It was also evident that the submarine was attempting to surface. Finally, there was only the number 900 and then silence. The question of whether everything was under control on the submarine could not be answered in the afternoon. 15 ships were dispatched that day, and in the evening the families of the victims were informed that their loved ones had not survived. This tragedy was taken seriously, and even IJF Kennedy ordered flags to be flown at half-mast to honor the memory of the crew of the submarine, the wreck of the submarine. They found, but not all. They were only found in 19,164 with the help of Trieste after they had been photographed. Examination of the wreck began because the submarine was at a depth of 2,560 meters, so it could not be fully photographed and, moreover, was almost unrecognizable due to the pressure. Of course, everything gradually came to light. Shortly after the loss of communication with the submarine, a low-frequency noise was heard, which was later identified as the implosion process. The information has only recently been declassified. Even Ballard. He admitted that the search for the Titanic was just a cover for the search for two submarines and to verify that the investigation had actually reached the right conclusion. One of these submarines was the trigger of the IUSS, so it is still subject to secrecy. It's probably not surprising when Ballard and his team went there to investigate if radiation was leaking from the wreck and sank it. According to published documents, the pipe burst and salt water got to the cables. These were not sufficiently insulated, which of course led to a short circuit and a shutdown. This made the nuclear submarine uncontrollable and unfortunately sank to a greater depth. Part of the ship was flooded and imploded, so the submarine collapsed. The Navy then began work on new rules for submarines, but work progressed slowly, and in 1916 another accident occurred. The U.S. Scorpion was another nuclear submarine and also the two that Ballard and his team were looking for. This submarine successfully entered service in 19,160 for 17 years. And the submarine also won several awards in 1916 and underwent an overhaul, which was only entered as an overhaul. Instead of a total repair, it only received emergency repairs. As the Cold War was ongoing and the pressure was enormous, the submarine had to be commissioned mainly because it was a nuclear submarine and it was groundbreaking in its own way and most importantly was required. Significantly, the system that caused the Thrasher crash was unrepaired on the U.S. Scorpion, although it was claimed to have worked properly from 19,157 to May 19. 168 submarines experienced such inconveniences as mechanical breakdowns, freon leakage from cooling systems, or electrical fires. Scorpion was tasked with monitoring Soviet Navy activity in the Atlantic before the fateful May. The submarine disappeared in late May while returning from a mission cruise in the Mediterranean. U.S. Scorpion reported its position 2105-19-168 and said nothing happened and everything was fine. but on 27.05. Should he return to Norfolk? Which didn't happen. The U.S. Navy launched an extensive search, but to no avail. For this reason, the submarine 0506 was marked in quotation marks. The probably lost wreck of the submarine was only found in October. This, of course, gave rise to many theories, each of which was Soviet revenge. Two of the theories advanced are the hot torpedo launch theory and the torpedo explosion in the torpedo launch theory. Either way, it meant another implosion and death for the 99 people on board. Of course, there were casualties on both sides. Brigades of both the U.S. Navy and the Russian Navy immediately after launch. The number of victims of the Russian nuclear submarine is 141. The Kirk was put into service in 19,194, so it is a modern type of submarine. In 19,195, the submarine was even consecrated by an Orthodox priest. The submarine was approved for construction during the Soviet era and was the largest class of attack submarine to be reconstructed like the Titanic. So claimed the EO of this submarine. That she was unsinkable because she had a double hull with exceptional corrosion resistance in 19,199. Kiss conducted a successful espionage reconnaissance mission in the Mediterranean. Submarine commander Jean Deitch Peter Talia Act became a national hero in Russia. We are approaching the year 2000, which is August. During this period, the largest naval exercise after the collapse of the SSRDA was to take place. It was called Summer X Risk and also took part in the exercise for the submarine K-141 KJ Disk, which began on the 8th of December 2000. As part of the exercise, at 11:28 a.m. local time, the submarine fired 2 blind torpedoes at the missile cruiser Pyotr the Great. The highly concentrated hydrogen peroxide used to propel the torpedo seeped through the envelope in the torpedo case. It probably got into the torpedo tubes and started a chemical chain reaction with the metals. An explosion corresponding to a load of 100 to 250 kilos of TNTA occurred in it, and an earthquake with a magnitude of 1.5 to 2.2 on the Richter scale was also registered. The submarine sank to a depth of 100 meters. When the explosion occurred 135 seconds later and was significantly more violent, as recorded by seismic stations across northern Europe, it was most likely that a larger number of torpedo warheads detonated at sea-floor level. The explosion ripped apart the ship's hull and compartments 3 and 4. Water immediately poured into the submarine with incredible speed and, unfortunately, everyone in those rooms died. The 23 male survivors from the unaffected compartments assembled in compartment 9. There was an escape tunnel that would have been physiologically possible. Exited the sub, but no one knew if the door would even open. 23 men remained trapped on the submarine after the emergency shutdown of the nuclear reactors, the emergency power source reported. It is frightening what Lieutenant Captain Dmitry Romanovich Kolesnikov wrote. It's too dark to write, but I'll try. There doesn't seem to be a chance, maybe 10 to 20%. I hope at least someone reads this. Here is a list of the people from Section 2 who are now in the 9s and will try to convey greetings to everyone from here. There is no need to despair. Kolesnikov's theories about how long the sailors survived are quite frightening. On the Russian side, there was talk of a quick death from penetrating water in the section where the rest of the crew was. They pointed out that superoxide cartridges were used to produce ZCO2 oxygen. The magazine with the cartridges could have come into contact with seawater, and after a chemical reaction, the section could have caught fire. Official exam. It turned out to be on fire, and some of the men saved themselves by diving below the surface of the water at that point. However, the waist-high fire quickly consumed the remaining oxygen and resulted in asphyxiation. Of course, there are still countless theories about what could have happened to the submarine. 118 people died then. Another Russian submarine with a sad fate was the strategic missile submarine K-129. The Golf II class sank in the Pacific Ocean on 03/08, 19,168. The submarine was at that time on a patrol mission, which lasted from February 19, 168. The Prophet told him the location. To mental leaps, but then she heard nothing more. At the end of March, the submarine was marked as presumably missing with the entire crew in quotation marks. The wreck was not found until August 19,168 at a greater depth than the wreck of the Titanic, 4,900 meters. There is still speculation about the cause of the accident. There were 98 passengers on board. We are moving from Russia and America to China. The Chinese submarine Mink 361 was a conventional diesel-powered electric submarine of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. China is trained with these SOCs in the East and accompanied various sorties against the USAA Pacific Fleet and other countries. And also with other states with which it had tense relations. The submarine 04-2003 conducted military exercises in the Yellow Sea between North Korea and the Chinese province of San. At that time it was on a non-contact mission, so I don't know exactly when it happened. It probably happened. April 16, 2003, the diesel engine was not shut down properly and consumed all available oxygen on board the submarine. It's a very slow death. You only notice the lack of oxygen when you want to sleep because of the hypoxia. The submarine was swept away by the current and discovered by Chinese fishermen 10 days later. According to the periscopes, looking inside was not for the faint of heart, but I had a name for noticing that everyone had just collapsed in their seats on the floor when they fell unconscious from hypoxia. A total of 70 crew members died, including 13 from the Chinese Naval Academy. Adjustments to regulations and command then occurred, with some senior officers being fired or demoted. The submarine K-8 was a Soviet nuclear submarine of Project 627 with 2 nuclear water reactors and was launched on 05/31/1959. In its biography, this submarine had 2 accidents that could have ended in its sinking. However, only the second accident ended fatally. An accident happened on 10/13/1960, so quite soon after commissioning under the command of Captain Shulikova. One of the nuclear reactors malfunctioned while the submarine was heading for the North Pole on the shore. At that moment, out at sea, a refrigeration cycle pipe exploded, resulting in a leak. The coolant had to be switched to a backup cooling system to prevent the reactor from overheating. However, its active gas data was leaked. Nor how many men were affected less than a year later. 08-04-19-170 The submarine was in the Bay of Biscay in the North Atlantic, 490 kilometers from the Spanish coast. When at that moment a fire broke out on board, both reactors were shut down, and the captain ordered to abandon the submarine after surfacing. When the warship came in, they were ordered to take the boat and crew back to the submarine. The submarine sank while being towed. Some of the crew were evacuated before the submarine sank to a depth of 15,000 feet, 4,680 meters, while 52 men died from smoke inhalation from the fire and the controversial rescue mission. Among them was the captain of the Russian submarine K-152, which was an Akula-class attack submarine and, as we have seen here several times, was again nuclear-powered. The 11th of August 2008, the submarine was on practice, and she conducted tests in the Bay of Peter the Great. The accident happened at 20:30 local time during an underwater test run. The submarine's fire suppression system was said to have been activated, sealing the 2 forward chambers and filling them with halogen gas. The gas displaces oxygen, which fuels the fire. This will smother the fire. In high concentrations, it causes unconsciousness, and if not resuscitated immediately, the person will suffocate, suffer brain damage, or remain in an irreversible coma. In this accident, 20 people died from asphyxiation and 41 injuries ensued, with many of those injured reportedly suffering from frostbite due to the cooling effect of the diaper. During the investigation, it turned out that a crew member had switched on the fire extinguishing system without permission or that the firemen had even started playing with it out of boredom. The system incorrectly estimated that a fire had broken out in the submarine and the person responsible for it had escaped. He was charged but later acquitted. The allegations surrounding this server are conspiracies, and the colleagues of the person who was supposed to start it are also skeptical. In your opinion, he was a specialist and would not do such a thing. In addition, the ship was overcrowded at the time, which may have contributed to such losses. There have been many other submarine accidents throughout history. These are the most interesting and largest. We must never forget that an accident can never be completely prevented, no matter how perfect the technology. What do you say to all these situations? Which story did you find the most interesting? Please write it in the comments. I would love to read it. Anyway, for today's video, like, comment, subscribe, share, enjoy, and goodbye.